The second scenario, everyone, that is one of them that the grouping team felt could work. The first parish, it would have 3 parishes, scenario 2. The first parish would be St. Irenaeus, St. James, St. Lawrence O'Toole. They would have enough parishioners and they would have enough money. St. Anne and St. John would have enough parishioners and enough money, but kind of tight. And then the third parish would be St. Agnes, St. Kieran, and St. Paul, so Chicago Heights. It would definitely have the people, it would definitely have the money. So that was one that the grouping teams, the 50 people, said it could work. It could work. So it's still in the mix. Parish 3, and I'm going through quickly so we can get rid of the ones that didn't work, and then we can talk about the ones. Scenario 3, again, didn't meet the criteria, some of them. So parish 1 would have been St. Agnes, St. Kieran, St. John and Glenwood, and St. Paul's. We definitely have the people, we definitely have the money. That would leave St. Anne's and St. James, which again kind of puts them near the edge of both people and money. I'm skipping one. The third one is St. Paul, just stay by itself. Again, it doesn't meet the criteria because it has the people, but it doesn't have the money. Again, the first parish is St. Irenaeus, St. Lawrence O'Toole. They don't have enough people, and they just barely make the money, so it doesn't meet the criteria. Parish 2, St. Agnes, St. Kieran, St. Paul, we would have the people and the money. Parish 3, St. Anne, St. James, and St. John would have the people and the money. But the team didn't look at it, the grouping teams, because they said one of the parishes don't make the criteria. The grouping team also, everyone, we're looking for what's going to work for all 8 parishes. So it's not what's going to work for 1 parish or 2, but rather what would work or what's going to work for all of us. Okay, scenario 6 was one we looked at. It's 3 parishes again, so the 8 would become 3. The first parish is Irenaeus, St. Lawrence O'Toole, and St. Paul. And so that would be kind of out this way. The second parish would be St. Agnes and St. Kieran. And the third parish would be the eastern parishes, St. Anne's, St. James, and St. John along the border. All 3 of them meet the criteria, so it was one we kept on the list because it met all the criteria. Okay. As the discussions continued, we came up with 3 new ones. The first one, again, is 3 parishes. So it would be, this one was based on, there are 2 schools in our grouping. St. Agnes has a school, and St. Anne's in Lansing has a school. So this one was looking at, okay, how do we split and give each of the schools a gym, facilities to work in? So in this one, Parish 1, would be St. Agnes, St. Irenaeus, and Lawrence O'Toole. The idea being that the gym and facilities at Lawrence O'Toole would be used by the St. Agnes school. Because right now, St. Agnes and St. Anne, both our schools don't have gyms. So both places where we have our schools don't have gyms. The second parish would be St. Kieran, St. John, and St. Anne. And again, it then gives St. Anne's in Lansing use of St. Kieran's gym and facilities. The third parish, St. Paul and St. James, they don't have a gym, but there is bigger space at St. James for liturgies for St. Paul, and so that would be the kind of southeast side. So again, and that is actually, I think that's the only one in so far as the groupings met that split Agnes and Kieran. So it's the The others keep Agnes and Kieran together because we've had the same pastor, but that one separated them and put Agnes in one and Kieran in one. The next two, and I think this actually, if we can take a break for 1 second, one of the questions is, after COVID, what really is going to come back? Because people look at these numbers and say, okay, are they real? If we used our numbers today, obviously during COVID, none of our parishes would survive. We can't survive as we are. And so the last two actually looked at, okay, instead of 3 parishes, should we look at 2 parishes? Or will we in 10 years be closing another parish and ending up with 2 parishes? So that's where these two came. And the grouping teams haven't discussed all that much the last 3. So you're seeing them, and the grouping teams have seen them, but we still haven't discussed them. But just to put that out there, it's like, okay, honestly, what do we think 10 years from now? Because the idea is, what are we going to leave as the church going forward? And so the last two present 2 parishes instead of 3. The first one does east and west. So the first one has parish 1 as St. Anne's, St. James, and St. John, the 3 along the Indiana border. They meet the number of people, they meet the income. The second parish has 5 parishes coming together. That would be Agnes, Kieran, Irenaeus, St. Lawrence O'Toole, and St. Paul. That would give us almost 4,000 people and 1.78 million. And there would be 2 worship sites. Again, in this one it talks about Kieran or Irenaeus, but it just probably with the 5 parishes there would be 2 worship sites. There's not any sense of what they would be yet. So as it was presented, they may have put in worship sites, but really it's 2 worship sites somewhere. The second one is north-south. And so it's 2 parishes north-south, and that would be St. Anne, St. John, St. Kieran, and St. Agnes would represent the north parishes. And there would probably be 2 sites again for worship. It would give almost 2,000 people and $1,700,000. The southern one would be St. James, St. Irenaeus, St. Paul, and Lawrence O'Toole, so kind of the Sauk Trail quarter. And that would be 3,200 people and $1,728,000. So pretty much the incomes are the same. So far, those are the scenarios that we have been looking at. And again, it just is important, besides kind of the heart element for all of us, is the reality element. We all worship in churches, and we see the numbers. We see who's here. We see the bills or what's getting paid and what's not getting paid. And so it's important as we talk about it, okay, what's going to be good for all of it? So at this point, if you raise your hand, because we do want a microphone so that people at home could hear, if you have comments in general, or if you have comments on a specific one, again, it's not that we can't spend time. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on ones that the grouping didn't think they'd work, unless you really think it would work and have a reason why you think it would work. But we will be taking notes, so whatever you tell us, we'll bring back to the grouping team. John.
John, could you talk in the microphone, please?
Yeah. Is the revenue number wrong under scenario 6 for the St. Agnes, St. Kieran combination?
Yes, it was. I apologize, because I think we brought it up I think the grouping team actually, but it's not that much. It's going to be somewhere between 7.75 to 8 to 0.8. So it's 0.7 to 0.8. So I think we're closer to 0.8 or 0.81 or 2, John. And so it was, I remember people asking that. I have to go back to the original sheet that shows our income, but I do think it's not. Oh, Ann's gonna look. She's got the original sheet, so.
$875,000.
So 75. So it's right at, so when the number comes in for Agnes and Kieran, our income, it's right at where it needs to be. So not above, not below, it's right at where it should be, which means it really should be higher.
Just had a question as far as how's the process as far as the final determination going to play out? Who's making that decision and what are they basing their decision on?
Sure. The grouping teams will eventually, so the 50 people, 40 lay people, the priests, we will make a recommendation. The best and easiest is if we make a recommendation that says we've come to the conclusion, even though it's painful, we believe scenario 3 or 6.2 is the best. After that, what happens is it's written up. It's written up what we thought of the other scenarios and why we picked this scenario. And then it gets sent to what's called the Renew My Church Commission. The commission is the group that the cardinal set up for the whole diocese. And they're basically not looking with any heart. They are looking at the two things we said, numbers of people, numbers of money. They're looking at facilities, because one of the things that we still haven't gotten is we still need to report the grouping teams on what needs to be done at all our facilities. So when we're looking at this, the other piece is, even if we meet the number of people and we meet the money, if it's a dump, that's probably not the place that's going to be the parish center. So that's another piece that figures in. So the commission, once the grouping team says this is what we want or what we think would work, they pass it on to the commission. The commission looks at it and will say, okay, it meets all the criteria, the buildings are in great shape. And I say that because no diocesan buildings are in great shape. Everyone has deferred maintenance. So we all have maintenance of things that need to be done. Roofs, asbestos, tuck pointing. If though they agree, then they will pass it up and it goes to the Presbyteral Council. And then the cardinal signs it and says, we agree that this is what will happen. Sometimes, because I'm on some of the other commissions, is the grouping team will come and say, we think scenario 2 and 6 are the best. And here's the reasons why we think these two are the best. And then they pass it up to the commission, and the commission may make that choice. The commission will look and say, okay, why did they like this one? Why did they like that one? The commission will make a choice, and then they'll pass it up to the Presbyteral Council and then to the cardinal. I'm just a firm believer. I don't like things happening to me. I like being part of it. So to me, I think it's a better idea that we come to an agreement. Is it perfect? Does it always happen? No. I've been on one grouping where I had to be like an outlooker looking in. They had 19 scenarios. And when they passed it up to the commission, they said, we don't agree on anything, do what you want. Well, I'll be honest, it's struggling because they then did what they wanted. And so it's struggling. And it wasn't the grouping team were very respectful of each other. They got to know each other. They liked each other. But they said, none of these will work. And in the case, and in some cases it just won't, because sometimes the way the diocese tried to group, it was 4 languages. So 4 languages, 8 or 10 parishes. So you'd come up with all these scenarios and people are like, it's just not going to work. Okay, I'll get back.
All right, I have a couple questions about the alternate
Sure.
ones. Okay, A1, now you said that there's gyms, there would basically be gyms then for 3 parishes. How, I mean, because I don't have kids who go to the school, how are the kids getting then from the school to these gyms which are not there?
The gyms, good question. The question is if we're splitting based on schools, it really is for extracurricular activities. So even the Kieran gym, our kids in school here now have gym here out on the parking lot or in the basement, but they have soccer, basketball, all their extracurricular sports are at a field. So that's how those would get figured in. They're not going to be busing kids from school for
Right.
gym or things.
Okay, and then alternate 2, so in this breakup, each parish then would be associated with a school. It mentions that St. Kieran and St. Irenaeus, I guess those would be the worship center. What is the capacity at each of those church, seating capacity at each of those?
The seating capacity, and again, just so you know, even though it was written with 2 worship sites, we aren't dealing with worship sites, so it shouldn't have been there. But if you look at that, Kieran's is 720. Irenaeus, I think, is 650,
Okay, because I know
or possibly 7.
when they had the bulletin a week and a half ago, there were 2 parishes that had 1,000 seat capacity each.
Yeah.
Has that been taken? Oh, I'm sorry. Has that been taken into account as to where the worship centers would be?
Well, it will be, again, honestly, the fact it was here, these were just last, as the grouping team met for the last time, we said, here are 3 more scenarios we want to talk about. We have not, if you look at any of the other scenarios, they're not looking at the worship sites. But yes, that will figure in, because an example is St. Paul right now seats about 250. They have 8 or 9 masses because they have 2,200 people.
Right.
If they combine with any parish, Irenaeus, St. James, those parishes seat 600 to 800 or so, or they say 1,000. The difference is some of our parishes, even when it says 1,000, Agnes, I don't know if it still says 420 or what we say, these used to all be pews. We're not. So our capacity is even lower than what it says.
Right.
It's the same at Kieran. We've changed things so that by the choir area, we've taken out pews. So it's a good estimate and close, but yes, but those are big. St. Anne's is a bigger church. St. James is a bigger church. St. Kieran and Irenaeus or Lawrence O'Toole.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, are we going to go back to any of the stuff that was talked about at the last meeting? Because it's not pertaining to this part, but it's about, my questions are about bringing youth into.
That will be, honestly, that's the 3rd phase. The first phase is, okay, now we've created these parishes. Now we bring them together. And then the 3rd phase is what we have to do to bring people back in.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
My question basically is, you keep referring to the committee. The committee, is that only associated with the Chicago Archdiocese?
Well, the grouping teams, each parish has 5 reps. So the grouping team is 5 parishioners from each of the 8 parishes, and then the pastors. The Renew My Church team is what the Cardinal set up 4 years ago and said, you are in charge of making this happen. So they are employees that are paid downtown that are going to make this happen. The Renew My Church process is only in Archdiocese of Chicago. Other dioceses do it differently. And for anyone who's here longer, in 1992, it was done here when 3 parishes were closed, and it was just done in different ways. So this is the archdiocesan process that Cardinal Cupich started, hired a team to make happen, and then it's done locally by people from each of the parishes.
And the reason I'm asking is because, you know, we're basically in the south suburb, away from the Chicagoland area. And we are typically left out. We don't get the privilege of joining these committees, voicing our concerns. You know, we've got St. Rocco's, and that belongs to another parish, another archdiocese. You know, people close by that would be able to help us out of trouble. So again, the representation doesn't seem to be there
Right.
as it should be.
The difference with St. Rocco, though, it's not a parish. So it's not, the 8 parishes are in our groupings. Oratories and chapels are not included because...
I meant St. Laborious.
Oh, yeah,
St.
Laborious is the Joliet
It's a
diocese.
huge, that's a Joliet diocese.
Yeah, so
again-
Laborious, St. Mary's, those are Joliet diocese.
That's what I meant, and not
Right.
St. Rocco's. I apologize.
No. But again, that will be up to their bishop. Every diocese in the country is going through the same thing. Numbers are going down, priest numbers are going down, and how do we bring it back up? So, yep, Tom.
I got one. This is looking at alternative 3, which breaks it into 2 parishes. And right now, the 2 existing schools are in the same parish. So just for potential consideration, if we see a value in a school for each parish, both sites have facilities that used to hold schools. So number 2, St. James, St. Irenaeus, St. Paul, St. Lawrence O'Toole could host a school instead of both schools being in the same parish. I'm not saying that's the way to go, but it's just, if we are seeing a value in a school anchoring a parish, that might be something to consider in reformulating the structure of those 2 parishes.
I think everyone too, though, and I agree, Tom, but I think also the schools for the most part kind of are off to the side. And I'll just give you the criteria for schools. They should be able to have 240 kids. St. Agnes, we're at 195. I think St. Anne's possibly might be 100, 125. So partly that's why the schools, even though we're talking about it for athletics or things, the 2 schools, will there be 2 schools, what that looks like. So schools, in a sense, they're not on a different track, but they are being looked at differently from the Catholic Schools Office. So there's their own kind of program looking at the Catholic schools for the Archdiocese. But people who have been in the parishes have seen that schools enjoy when they have fields and they have places to do sports. And so that was why it came up that way, that in some places we split the schools so that each one would have space to run around, would have gyms and things. But again, it's not that it's not outside Renew My Church, but they're looking at the schools in their own criteria. and 240 is the criteria. So for all of us, all of our schools need to increase.
So I'll start off with a comment first, and then I have a question. This has been no secret that this meeting was taking place. And it was in the bulletin, and it was put out there that, that it was going to be tonight. And while there's more people than were here the last meeting,
Yep.
with such an important decision that needs to be made for the future of the parishes and the south suburbs, I'm very surprised and shocked actually that there aren't more people here to see what's going on or to provide input, which leads to my question. How are you, or is the input being sought from the parishioners as far as what they would think is the best scenario in these scenarios that are being put forth?
What we have, Jim, is I feel like I'm proud of the 10 people from Agnes and Kieran. So I feel they're good representatives of the people. I'm very proud of, if you go to the 8 parishes, we put the most information in our bulletin and on our webpage over and over. That's all we have. The last letter we sent out, if you remember the little thing, give us your email address, we've got 25 back. People don't give us emails. So I'm fine, and I'm fine with what we got. We've got the best we've got. And it doesn't change. I mean, it would be people voicing their heart. It doesn't change the facts. So for me, I feel like we have a representation of the parish. I think it's going to be shocking when COVID is finished and we open up. But I think it's also going to be shocking because I don't think people will be coming back. I don't think a lot. So the concern is the numbers are not even going to play out when we're done. So the numbers aren't going to be there. And the diocese is taking a chance on that, saying we're still going to give people a chance. So we're going to, if they say this, even though in our mind, and I say that because the diocese has people who just work the numbers over and over. And so they'll say, they'll look at these and say, even though on paper they look good, what they think when we come back from COVID, the diocese is taking a chance out, but it's not going to work. In their mind, it's not going to start the way you think. So I do think they'll be shocked. I say this every day, Jim, and I don't know a different way to say it. People will be shocked when they come back just by people we've lost during COVID, whether we lost them to COVID or to deaths in other ways. If we ever open up and people come back, people are going to look around and say, where did this person go? Where did this person go? So I understand what you're saying, but as far as Agnes and Kieran, I think we have put and continue to put the information out there and continue to ask for input on it. So, yeah.
2 things to say. One, a comment that was made to me about the representation on this board was there's a group that's definitely lacking, and that's our late 20-something, early 30s. And those are the people we're trying to get into the church and keep the church, but yet they don't seem to have a voice in this at all. And the other thing is, you've been pastor of all 3 parishes in Heights. Is it really feasible just to keep the 3 of us together and make it work, do you think?
I think it can work. Here's my thinking, just so you know. I mean, my thinking is whatever forms, 3 parishes or 2 parishes, and I say this whether people are excited about it or not, all have to be bilingual. So however we split, so whether it is the Heights parishes coming together, great. We will be bilingual. We've already started here. Paul's coming. We'll be a very strong bilingual parish. The other parishes have work to do because they have to get to that point. So some of the divisions, when I look at divisions, is I divide us from St. Paul sometimes just because I think we can become a bilingual parish, and whoever St. Paul's joins with will be a bilingual parish. And then if it's a third parish, they're going to have to work on that. Because survival for 10 years means we have to have Spanish. And so I guess that's my comment kind of to that. So would it work? I think it will work. If it meets the criteria, I think it will work. If it has good pastors. If they have, and I'm not saying a pastor is the end all, but any of you, if you've been in parishes, and if a pastor blocks things or ends things, it's over. I mean, so any of the parishes that form, 3, 2, 4, whatever, they need good leadership. If they have good leadership, they will eventually grow, or they will eventually see their needs, put the needs in place, and grow. If there isn't, they're not. I do think, Dan, and I think in the grouping team, I don't think, I think you're correct. I'm not sure we have people younger than 30 on the grouping team. But everyone in that grouping team understands that that's our future. And by that, it's also parents who, all their children grew up in these 8 parishes. And so they see that will be the future.
I did not mean to offend any of you that are on the grouping team. I think you are all great people. I'm just saying that, to me, that seems to be a group that is definitely lacking.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, I know most of you from the church.
Yep. Nope.
I think you're great people.
Yep. Please. You're not on. I'm sorry, Ann.
In response to that, it's a valid concern, and obviously we're trying to grow that population. But with the presentation available online, with the information online, they may not be here today, but hopefully somehow communicating to Father John concerns that we still have a voice. And as Father John said, I think all of us on the committee are well aware of it and trying to represent, that population.
Everyone just, let me speak a little bit more, then any more questions, then we'll wrap up. Jim kind of asked what the process now continues another couple of grouping meetings that will continue to just pour over these. And then by, I think the third meeting or so after this, which the grouping team is meeting, a report will be written and say that after we've met, these are the scenarios we think could work, or this is the scenario we would choose and why. Then what happens is the priests and the writers will go before the commission. So they go before, and actually there's one other step before the commission. The priests and the writers, which are from the grouping team, will go before the archdiocesan policymakers. So Betsy Bolin, who is the CFO of the diocese, the Vicar General, who is now Bishop Bob Casey, it will be the 6 vicars, so the 6 bishops of the local areas, and they will present the report to that group. So they're the first, so I missed one step. So they're the first group that after the grouping team says, we want this scenario, then The writers and the priests go to this archdiocesan group and say, okay, and if it meets the criteria, then it goes up to the commission. And then it goes to the Presbyteral Council, and then to the cardinal. One of the things, and I just, out of transparency, because when people say what people hear or not, the appeals and the heights we know of appeals to Rome from when the last ones happened, they happen, and people can appeal decisions. So when the cardinal makes a decision, any person physically living in the parish can make an appeal to Rome and say why they think it's a bad idea. It just delays everything, but in a sense, locally things will continue moving forward, but the final thing doesn't happen. But I put it out there because people have a right to do that. But I also put it out there because for many of our parishes, our parishioners aren't local. The most local parishes are Agnes, St. Anne's, and that's probably the most local parishes. Lots of the other parishioners come from all over. Indiana, Crete, Bourbonnais, Frankfurt, all over, Chicago. And I only say that in the sense of an appeal can only be made by someone who actually is a parishioner and lives in the parish. But I just put it out there out of transparency. So, any other questions? Yep. Yes.
Okay, I have two questions. One, I don't know if there is any data on this, because I agree with Mr. Robinson. Is there any data from any of these churches about the number of young people, and I mean possibly looking at that as how to do groupings as far as the future of those churches, because that's what that is, because no offense, but a lot of the churches are older people. So I just didn't know if that...
Can I answer that one right away?
Yeah.
The diocese has the data. The average age of St. Agnes, people who live around it, is 32 years old. That's the average age, not who's in the church, but our community that falls in the parish is 32 years old. The average age at St. Kieran, who would fall in their community, who live in that community, is 37. So yes, the young people are here. They're not in here, but the young people are in our community.
So there's no specific data on like in the churches themselves, just their areas.
Again, I think probably if we look to the other parishes, that will go across, that age group goes across. Not that they're in church, but
Well, right, that's what I'm
saying is St. Paul's, when I was pastor there 10 years ago, the average age was 26. So I mean, so the young people are here in all of our parishes. So whatever combination you make, they're here. Now, will they come in the door? That's the question. And that's what the third piece is how do you get young people to come in the door? How do we make it so it makes sense to them?
Okay. Second question. When we get to the point that, okay, they've decided on the groupings, now locally, you guys are going to talk about buildings and facilities and things like that. Will we have the opportunity to put any input into that at all? Or is that just you guys say what goes and that's it?
It will be, the announcement of the decision will come out in January.
Right.
So the decision will come out in January of this will be the parish.
Yes.
Then the work will begin to say, how are we going to use the parish facilities?
Right.
So again, if a parish was three churches now become one parish, then the work begins at that point. And it's if if a pastor, sometimes when the combination is made, the cardinal immediately names a pastor. The new parish actually will form on July 1st of 2021. So, but sometimes a new pastor right away has said, this is the person who's going to be your pastor. He isn't the pastor in January, but it's announced so people know and there's some stability. This is what is coming. The other pastors in that group and the other parishes will work with whoever that is and begin to say, what sites are we using, what aren't. So an example, there have been some parishes, and I'm just using it, in the city, July 1st, the new parish formed, they had their last masses 2 weeks later. And the reason was they had 20 people in each church. And the churches were falling down, and they were in bad neighborhoods that were dangerous. And so the group in January found out they're going to be a new parish. The groups of parishes met and said, okay, we need to really quickly move to become one parish, one worship site. Let's have our last parishes. Some parishes at the beginning of COVID hoped that they would be able to reopen and have a grand celebration. It isn't happening. It's not going to happen. And so, so parishes have said, these will be our last masses, and then we will move to what will be the parish church or the parish sites.
Okay, well, that didn't, okay.
And so you would have, the people who are in the parish have a say in that.
Okay, that was my question.
Under the leadership of their pastors.
Right. So like I'm saying, like, will there be another meeting like this for facilities where we can come and put our opinions in? That was my question.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not familiar,
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar, again, there's 3 pieces of the piece. I'm familiar with the first piece, which is what we're in. The second piece, I definitely know they have those meetings. Because the other thing with those is, now you're dealing with people who are, I'll be honest, we may not be happy, but once the actual decision is made, now we're really dealing with unhappy people. So a good pastor is going to meet with them and say, okay, what do you want to do? A good pastor is also going to say, what names do you want? Because we're going to have to come up with what is the name of the new parish. So yes. Yeah. Dorothy?
I didn't hear a lot about the discussion on the schools, and they apparently don't really enter into this process too much.
Yep.
But okay, we've got what? A school on that end, and this one here. There are no restrictions on who can come into these schools, are there?
Like what?
Well, I mean, you know, if somebody at St. James, since they don't have a school there now, wanted to register here,
Right.
aren't they free to do so?
Presently, they're already free to do that. So the schools our schools are done where people can choose their school. So yes, so they would be anyone in the 8 parishes can choose the 2 schools we have, or the other school is IJP. So, and they're at 200. So those are the numbers that we have. So, but yes, so the schools are open to anyone who wants them.
Right, and so they're not being overutilized at this point because people could be coming to them. Our enrollments are not that great.
Oh, sure. No, our enrollments, I mean, for the diocese, again, the enrollment should be 240 at least. So for the diocese, they'd like the enrollment to grow, yes. But just like our parishes, we then have to figure out how we're going to fund them. So at $6,000 a year, it's very hard to fund this. And then if you go to a private high school, $11,000 a year, it's hard to fund it. So, but no, so yes, there's always room. We always have room. Now during COVID, it's a little less. It's because we have actually gotten people now who are not happy with online and are trying to come in. We don't have the space because we also are distancing. So we're at 195, and about 50 are staying home. They choose to be home learners. That's helpful for us. We're concerned in a month they get a choice if they want to come back, and we think those 50, many of them will come back, which then means we have to look at how we're spreading out. So right now, you know, the diocese wants more kids, but right now we can't take more kids.
Well, I'm just asking because if there's a question of whether whatever groups are developed, there's a school here and there's a school there, and, you know, more or less
Sure.
in each grouping. It doesn't seem to matter now because those schools are available to everybody around here.
Sure, sure, nope.
That's all.
Yep.
The other thing I kind of got hung up on, and I don't know, maybe I'm being silly, was this comment on scenario 6 about St. Agnes and Kieran's combining would be, maybe it would be too much of the same since we already do so much together, and would that really be viable 10 years down the road? I don't see the meshing between those two comments. Nobody knows what's going to happen 5 years down the road, let alone 10. And what would be wrong? I mean, what does it mean? We do, maybe it's too much of the same. What does that mean?
Yeah. Again, Dorothy, it's the question is we have to look outside ourselves. So how that came up, and I'll be honest, I think we are. The fact that we've started a Spanish Mass, I think we're looking outside ourselves. But for other people, looking in may say, no, that's not enough. I do think a benefit is we have done lots of things with St. Kieran and St. Agnes. It's a benefit. We've done things with St. Paul and St. Agnes. It's a benefit, St. Irenaeus. So whatever the decisions are done, I see all that as a plus. Other people may say, it's the same old. We can't be the same old. And so, and just so everyone knows, the diocese won't let us be the same old. So anyone who thinks when we're done, we're going to be the same old, there will be new staffing that the diocese approves, things like operations people and stuff who operate like below the pastor, but run the parishes in different ways. But it's things people are thinking. So it's put down because people think things.
Well, I still don't understand what it means
Yep.
because we certainly aren't too much of the same.
Yeah.
I don't see this place as too much of the same. We have a large Spanish community. We have the elders who are passing away by the dozens. This is shifting. There's no problem with that. I have no problem with that. I think it's wonderful that we finally have a Spanish Mass. We have a Spanish school. I don't know what numbers are like at St. Kieran with Spanish-speaking people. I don't know. But I just don't see the two of us, you know, that happen to be on top of one another when all is said and done, as somehow too much of the same of something. It makes no sense to me.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, Dorothy, and it's not, all it's saying is a caution to us who are thinking about it. We have to think bigger than what we are. That's all. And by bigger meaning, it's going to be different. So, but I understand what you're saying, but the grouping also, that was it. It was nothing, it wasn't bigger than that. It was just, okay, we just have to remember and it'll be bigger.
I'm going to have a very unpopular thing. The reason I was asking about bringing in the youth is I grew up in Chicago, public grammar school, Catholic high school. I think that the parishes that have a school recognize the school kids that go to the school. I've been in Mass where graduates were recognized, but we completely forget about the kids who come to church and live in the neighborhood. There's no recognition. And I think that's something that can make someone say, you know, all you think about are those school kids. I can't go to school there, but so I'm not worthy of any recognition. Why do I want to go there? All right. I mean, and this is a deep issue with me because my local parish, when I was growing up, would not allow me to go to CCD because my mother had no money.
I'm sorry. Could you-
I couldn't go to CCD, religious ed, because my mom didn't have the money for it. St. Agnes raises money, has lots of fundraisers towards the school. There's no recognition in the bulletin in Mass of these kids who live around here, who are the parish.
I disagree. And I'm going to be blunt there because Terry, who is in charge of religious ed, she works really hard to get information in the bulletin. When we do sacraments, those kids are included with our sacraments, and then when we have blessings or things afterward, they are part of it. I understand what you're saying. It's different. They're different, but sometimes it's different because people think they're different. Not necessarily. So if I say, would all our teachers stand up? It's not just St. Agnes, it's not just St. Kieran. If you're a teacher at Loyola, you're a teacher, I expect you all to stand up and I'll give you a blessing.
I'm sorry, Father, but the church, St. Agnes has cordoned off area to recognize the high school students who graduated from St. Agnes, who went to St. Agnes and graduated from high school. I didn't see any recognition of these other students.
Sure. And one of that, Chris, and if there's more people on staff, we do not get information from Bloom or from Thornton or from any of the public schools. If we get that information from parents and things, it's put in our bulletin. Sometimes when you see a little note, I'll be honest, it's Kay who's found out someone graduated or something. We don't know that. We don't have all we get, Marion sends out, here's your list of honor rolls. We get Leo High School sends out, here's your list of kids on the honor roll. We don't get that.
I'm talking more of like when you have like I said, when there was a time when you recognized the St. Agnes kids who graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. All it was is you widen the cording off, and it's any high school senior who's graduated.
Sure. We will add that definitely is a part, and we should, honestly, I totally agree with you. I don't think anyone should be treated differently. I sometimes think if we're specific with a certain group, and some of it may be the graduates, it's because we're trying to build up an alumni association to keep the school open. So I understand that, but that's different than whether we're recognizing everyone in the parish. But I think it's important that everyone should be.
Right, and I mean, like I said, it's come from a bad time in the church not putting money before the people.
Yeah.
And, you know, it can jade me.
Right.